Let's get some discussions on whether or not tariffs can help U.S. President Donald Trump to achieve his goal of bringing back manufacturing jobs to the U.S. We're now joined by Jameel Ahmad, Chief Analyst at online trading brokerage GTC. Hi there, Jameel. Great to have you on the show with us. So given the current economic outlook and the ongoing impacts of tariff policies, what adjustments might the Federal Reserve consider in its future monetary policy decisions? I mean, specifically, how would U.S. tariffs influence the Fed's approach to interest rate cuts?
Well, initially, the train of thought was that because of the tariffs were likely to increase prices, that this would lead to inflation increasing, and this would then lead to the Federal Reserve being under renewed pressure to increase interest rates. But I've always been on the other side of the coin. These tariffs are firmly going to put the U.S. economy under unnecessary pressure. Remember, the U.S. is targeting so many different trading nations at one time, and we're already seeing the number of economic growth forecasts be cut in the United States. But more worryingly is the substantial increase in the recession forecasts. I don't personally think there's going to be a recession, but you're seeing those forecasts increase by double or triple just compared to the end of 2024. And in such a scenario, if consumers stop spending because of higher prices, remember consumer spending is the #1 driver of US GDP, and if economic growth is falling, then the Federal Reserve would actually be under pressure to cut interest rates rather than the initial train of thought of increasing interest rates.
Now that U.S. March CPI data is out, do you notice any effects of tariffs on U.S. domestic price levels?
Not at all, and it's going to take a number of months before we start seeing these tariffs actually start to impact the consumer price inflation and other inflation metrics. Where we might start to notice an increase over the coming months is in the PMIs, and the PMI data would then show what industry activity is taking place. But in terms of the inflation, it will take at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 months until we start to see the tariffs actually start to increase on price pressures, because there's always a lag when it comes to the data and the time. What I would say is that inflation did actually fall to its lowest levels since roughly March 2021, which would have helped the Federal Reserve continue to cut interest rates, which was the bias for 2025 anyway. But this tariff uncertainty on all the mayhem that's taking place in financial markets, as we all know, is really adding a spanner into the works when it comes to the Federal Reserve and their potential monetary policy strategy.
And also, Donald Trump began to implement those tariff policies in order to boost U.S. manufacturing. Do you believe that these policies will successfully serve this goal?
It might increase it, but the barometer here for being successful is completely, I would say, unrealistic, because the U.S. economy, again, has evolved tremendously since the glory days where the U.S. was the manufacturing hub of the world. You have to consider how big technology and other sectors are in the United States. U.S. citizens now expect far better and higher-paying jobs, and the economy has basically transformed and evolved tenfold since those times the U.S. economy was a manufacturing hub. I'm not going to say they can't try to recover some of those jobs, but are the jobs that they might be able to recover? Again, it's hypothetical. You might be able to recover them. Is it worth offsetting the downside risks to economic growth, the financial market turmoil that's taking place, and the uncertainty that overall this is going to promote to so many industries, which can impact job growth, wage growth, and all sorts of other uncertainties? So I would say that on that case, no, it's not going to be successful, and it's going to take a real long battle in order for that to be successful.
Well, thank you so much for your insights. That's Jameel Ahmad, Chief Analyst at GTC for us. Thank you. U.S. President Donald Trump's unpredictable tariffs have threatened